Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Life of a Business Manager podcast. Today, we're joined by a special guest, Jon Dario, the founder of AIM, which stands for Action Item Management. In this episode, we're going to dive into his journey, the inspiration behind AIM, and the lessons he's learned along the way that every business manager can benefit from. Let's get into the episode. Hi, Jon. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being on.
Thank you, Sina. Glad to be here with you. Absolutely.
I'm glad we were able to make this work too.
Agreed.
Let's just get a little bit of a background about yourself. Do you want to just start with an introduction?
Sure. Be happy to. Um, Jon Dario. I am a retailer at my core. Started right out of college with Macy's in their executive training program. Spent time in stores and in the buying line. Then bounced around to a couple of other companies before landing for an extended period of time with Gap. I had various jobs with Gap. I ran a flagship store in Manhattan. I ran a district down in the Southeast. I went out to headquarters and ran operations for the outlet division, and I ended up with the Old Navy team for my last bit of time at Gap. From there, I went to Bank of America, so I was in financial services retail, and then spent a good chunk of time running the North American operations for TravelX, which was at the time the world's leader in retail foreign currency. And then I ended up in my current role, which is CEO of Edison Properties, a real estate company that's in New Jersey and New York. And along the way, I've written a few books. I've been the professor of retail marketing at Seton Hall University. I've done various consulting gigs through kind of a side company where I help particularly retail organizations with their management skills and management programs. So I've been very lucky through my career, and I try and pass on as much as I can.
Well, you sound like a busy guy here, Jon. Can you just give the audience a little bit like of what does your typical day look like right now?
Sure. Like I said, I've got a day job as a CEO of a real estate company. That consumes much of my time. I just published my fifth book, so right now I'm in the process of doing promotion and stuff for that, and I help a few clients at a time. Kind of mentor. I mentor their managers, and I help them set up training programs for their frontline staff and for their frontline managers. But my day job really consumes most of my time during the day and during the week. And as a CEO, I have strategic planning responsibilities. I have a great team who works for me that they've been in place for a long time, and much of my time with them is about planning and organizing and helping coordinate among departments and helping to kind of set priorities for the organization and communicating on all of the challenges that are facing the business and trying to find strategic ways forward. So it's no 2 days are the same. Every day brings its own challenges, and that's kind of I think typical in the business world these days.
Yes, I completely agree. I think that's the reason why I'm in business management is because no 2 days are the same.
Yeah.
It's a different day, a different fire that you need to take care of every single day. I'm just curious because you've written 5 books. Is there one that like stuck with you for a minute, like you just go back to? I'm sure all 5 are great, but just one that you could describe.
Yeah, look, I mean, the one that I just published is definitely the best, no doubt about it. It's called AIM: How Managers Get Radically Reliable Results. And AIM stands for Action Item Management, and it is all about what I think are the most important things for managers or for leaders in terms of getting organizational results. It's getting beyond kind of the all of the hoopla that swirls around all of us and the chaos that kind of takes us out of our regular routines and helps put the focus back on the action items that we can control. And it's all about establishing that culture. And it's kind of the culmination of all of the other books I've written and all the other experiences I've had through my career.
No, perfect. And let's just go back to retail. I'm just curious because what is your opinion on retail? Because it's changed so much, right? As far as the online shopping, and now we don't even have the brick and mortar stores anymore. I mean, I
Yeah.
used to be able to go to the mall. I used to do a little bit of retail. I was in retail for a good couple of years when I was younger. I think everyone's been in retail of some sort in their life. What's your opinion as far as the way retail has changed? Especially with Gap now. I've seen all the Gap commercials lately. So
Yeah. I'll attack your question from a couple of different angles. It's a really good question. First of all, it's interesting. I start every one of my semesters that I teach at Seton Hall. with the question to my retail marketing students about what percentage of retail business do they believe is done online now. And every single semester, the answer I get is 70%, 75%, and they all swirl around those numbers. Based on the United States Department of Commerce data, it's 18%. And that shocks people, and particularly people who believe that brick and mortar retail is dying. The reality is that so much of retail is not done online. It's still, there are a number of tons of retail businesses that still depend on live interactions. You can't get a haircut, for instance, online, and all the haircut places are retail businesses. That's just a simple example. But so I do believe it's a bit of a red herring that retail business, brick and mortar business is gone. That said, your point is right on that it's changed a lot. And the successful retailers are the ones who can create an omni-channel experience where they leverage their website and online vehicles to enhance the experience that customers get by shopping in store. And the retailers that are I think going to be most successful going forward are those that can combine the online experience with the in-store experience and create true experiences rather than just a shopping trip. And I do believe that retailers who can make the in-store environment exciting and useful in a way that is different from online, those are the retailers that are going to continue to excel. Addressing your point about Gap, look, I was lucky enough to be at Gap during the mid '90s when Gap was all that.
Yes.
it was on top of the retail world, and the company did a lot of things right. I think from a fashion perspective, they maybe got a little too ahead of themselves and maybe got a little bored with the kind of the basic fashion that was so foundational to the brand. And on top of that, it was a time, the late '90s and early 2000s was a time when the company was rolling out the Old Navy brand, and I think there was a bit of overlap there that might have created some customer confusion and cannibalization. But clearly, in my opinion, and to your point, the company is back. They seem to have a really good merchandising focus, and they seem to be doing a much better job of finding their real consumer base and identifying and matching the product to the target customer. I think they're doing a really good job right now.
Yes, I agree with you. I was just curious just to go back into retail with that because I Gap is more of a happening topic now, and with all their new commercials, I'm just seeing it everywhere. So they've definitely picked it up now. But
Agreed.
at least from a retail perspective. But let's go back to AIM and your books. As far as working there and being the founder there, are you working from home or are you actually in person when you do the work that you
Yeah,
do?
when I'm doing my work with retailers, most of what I do is remote. I work with companies all over the world. To be honest, I my most recent gig was with a sporting goods store in Australia. And as much
Oh,
as I would have
neat.
loved, yeah, as much as I would have loved to travel and be on site with them, I didn't get that opportunity. That said, I do believe that the times when I'm most effective is when I can get kind of on the ground with the team and I can see the store live and I can see the customer interactions and I can interact with the frontline teams. So the remote nature of much of what I do in helping companies it's fine. It's I can mentor people and I can get a good sense through FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, but it never quite matches the effectiveness of being on the ground with the team.
Yes, I agree with you. I prefer sometimes in my opinion, I just think 20 emails could just be one visit in regards to getting it home.
So true, so true.
Because all of our emails are all completely full and it's hard to just keep up with it, so I'm all for being in person. I was just thinking the type of work if you're doing hybrid or, remote, in person. It sounds like if they're local, I guess, are you going on site?
Yeah, I don't do a whole lot of work with local companies. Much of what I do is kind of spread out. Obviously my day job, I'm spending 50 hours a week managing businesses that are right in the immediate area, and I spend a good deal of time, out and about in the locations, and despite being a CEO, I think it's very important for me to be present and on the front lines, and I do that constantly.
Perfect. Okay. So, how do you find the balance between your work and your personal time in regards to it sounds like you have a full-time job, you're CEO, you're writing 5 books. I can't keep up, John.
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, I guess part of it is a definition of what is my personal time, and I get a tremendous amount of enjoyment out of the books and the consulting work. So I almost don't consider that work. I consider that more my personal time. So maybe that's just a warped sense of what personal time is, perhaps. But I I think the real answer to your question is that look, I've been doing this for a long time, and I humbly feel like I've gotten some pretty good systems down, and I've got great people who work with me, and I trust them, and we've got systems in place that allow me to feel really good about what they're doing, and to stay in touch with every detail, yet not have to spend inordinate amounts of time micromanaging and being on top of every single thing, because we have a really good system of communication, a really good system of action item management that allows me to kind of stay in charge and stay in touch without it being a ridiculous number of hours. So I have gotten to the point in my career where I can get a very challenging job done and still have time to do a lot of other stuff. It's fortunately because I've got a great group working for me, and we've figured out over the years how to create systems that really are quite effective.
No, that sounds great. I have to ask, but within your work and systems and everything that's being created, have they incorporated AI into any of that?
Um, as the hot topic of the day for sure. We do use AI for to facilitate some things like meeting notes, for instance. We'll use AI, when we have Microsoft Teams meetings, we record and we let Microsoft Copilot kind of give us recaps of the action items and the summaries of the meetings, and that takes some bureaucratic work, away. The team has used AI for my IT team, for instance, has used AI to increase efficiency of programming. AI is a really important help when it comes to sifting through the huge amounts of data to get answers quickly, and I think that each of us on the team uses AI to help with drafting memos and giving us some starting points for the written communication pieces that we put together. But I'm quite hesitant to replace real management activities with AI. I don't like technology taking the place of personal involvement, personal conversations, personal inspections. I think we're human beings, and we all like interacting with human beings, and I think there's nothing quite like a live conversation. So I have resisted. Perhaps I'm just an old guy, I don't know, but I've definitely resisted the idea of substituting management behaviors with AI.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I'm kind of 50-50 because, I'm here in the Bay Area, so AI
Yep.
is the topic. And, every time I go on LinkedIn and I see all these jobs that are getting laid off, and I don't know if it's AI related. We really don't know, right? I don't
Yeah.
really know the company that's doing that.
Yep.
But I am a little bit nervous, as you mentioned, in regards to the interaction because I'm not really a big fan of interacting with a robot,
No.
I'd rather talk to a person, so
Yeah, I mean, I think you said that perfectly. I mean, every time I try and get something done with a large company that has, AI, rather than a live person on the phone, I always end up frustrated that I'm not getting the nuance of my question across, and I'm not getting my real problem resolved, and I always end up trying to get to a live person. So, it scares me that companies rely too much on AI for stuff that should be personal interactions.
yes, yes, and the thing is, I've noticed that every time at least from my experience, and I can only speak from my experience, but every time I call an 800 number, it's like I have to scream customer service for me just to get to a live person.
I'm with you. So true. Yes.
It's frustrating, but I understand the efficiency and how it can increase, like, productivity. I use AI, so I get it. For meeting notes, it makes sense.
Yep.
For calendars, for cleaning up your emails or drafting something if you're having just a brain fart for that
Yep.
day. For it to completely take over, it's quite tough because you do miss not miss, but the personal experience, like the one-to-one experience is where I think sometimes it makes a big deal in
I agree.
regards to helping out anyone that needs help, right?
I agree. Look, I mean, if you believe the experts on communication, they say that the words you use are a small part of the message that you get across. It's tone of voice and body language, including facial expressions, are extremely important to the communication process. And when you're communicating with AI, you lose those pieces. You can get the words across, but you miss other pieces that are highly important to the whole process.
Yes, yes, completely agree. John, just a quick question. What is one piece of advice that you would give any like business managers out there, but just anyone listening out there because we have listeners from all over the country. I'm hitting almost 150 countries at this point, which is crazy.
Wow,
But
that's
I
amazing.
know. Thank you. Thank you. What is one piece of advice that you would give anyone that is looking to either go into a similar role as what you're in or looking to create their own business, consulting business, or some sort of
Yeah. Mm, I think that I would strongly recommend that people in that position um, don't let themselves get so caught up in their own tasks and their own priorities that they miss the point of devoting time to management behaviors and leadership behaviors. As people grow in their careers and they take on more responsibility, I think it's it's too frequent that people get bogged down in the more complex aspects of their own personal contributions in their newly elevated list of responsibilities, and they miss the fact that they've got responsibility for people on the team who need their guidance, who need their motivation, who need their help in resolving obstacles. And to the extent that we as leaders get so caught up in our own stuff that we don't clear the path forward for our teams, we're missing out on the bigger side of our responsibilities, and we're missing out on leveraging the larger number of hours that we have at our disposal to get the entire work done for the organization. So I think, as people grow in their positions, I strongly encourage them to continue to carve out time to spend with their teams, whether that's in follow-up activities or general communication, or just observing what's going on. And I think people will find that their impact on the organization will be much greater when they spend time with people rather than trying to do their own thing exclusively.
Thank you. And is that what you've noticed is when you actually do the review one to one with the team that there are miscommunication and misalignment in regards to the management in itself?
Yes. I think there's always misunderstandings, and there's always risk of people running into challenges or obstacles that they can't resolve themselves. And I don't think it's a function of people wanting to fail or not wanting to succeed. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I think, I'm a strong believer that most people want to be successful. I don't believe that people wake up in the morning and decide that they're going to be bad. But it doesn't mean that everybody has the same definition of what success looks like, and not everybody has the same vision of exactly what the desired end result is. And so as leaders, we have an obligation to continually communicate that, and to continually keep our hands on the steering wheel, not to be an overbearing manager, but just to stay involved. And if nothing else, it gives us the opportunity to give people positive recognition for the successes that they're achieving, and that keeps them motivated and keeps them going, and keeps them wanting to continue to succeed. And if nothing else, that's a positive benefit. But more likely, Yeah, to answer your question, I see it all the time. If everything was as simple as sending an email and people would do it and get it right, then there would be no need for managers in any organization. Fortunately, that's not the case. Otherwise, I would have been out of a job many years ago. The reality is that people do need and want, quite frankly, somebody to help them and guide them and be a partner with them.
Yes, and you're spot on with the recognition because I feel like that is truly what makes someone's day. And to be able to feel that the influence in order for you to keep moving forward with your job, right? So just getting recognized in general, I think helps any employee, any team member that's working under their management.
Very well said. Couldn't agree more.
Yes. So, John, just going back, what have you learned about yourself that you didn't know before? So we're getting to know you here.
Boy, that's been a constant journey. I try and keep an open mind to learning something every day. I was lucky enough to in my very early growing up years to be involved in Korean Taekwondo, the martial art, and I had a master who was an incredible human being. He was an absolute expert. And in the martial arts, experts typically wear black belts and beginners wear white belts. This man, Lion Kil Choi, always wore a white belt. And I asked him one day why he still wore a white belt despite being an expert. And he said, because I still learn every day. And that stuck with me. I was 10 years old at the time, and it stuck with me through my entire career. And I encourage myself and others to approach life with this white belt mentality where you keep an open mind. I have learned so many things. There's been so many turning points, over the course of my career. I can remember in my mid-20s when it dawned on me that, um, that I was a manager and a leader, not really being a very nice guy. I was sarcastic, I was demanding, I was, directive. It worked for me when I had small teams that I had full control over. As my responsibilities got larger and I had bigger teams, I realized that people just didn't like working for me. And so that was an eye opener, and I began to realize that it was important for me to be better at treating people with respect. And so that was a turning point in my mid-20s. At some point in my maybe late 20s or early 30s, it dawned on me that it wasn't possible for me to have all the answers. And I thought I was really good at what I did, and I guess I was, but I wasn't great. I wasn't perfect. I wasn't there were other people that were really smart and really good, and when I accepted that fact, it changed my style tremendously. So instead of talking at people, I engaged in more two-way communication, and I opened my mind to the fact that there might be more than one right way to get something done, and if somebody else has a good plan and a good approach and a smart way to get something done, I should let them do it their way. And so that was a big turning point for me. And there continue to be turning points. Every day I do something that I wish I had done differently. And fortunately, I guess I've gotten to a point in my life where my ego's not quite as big as it was, and I'm okay with saying I'm sorry and I made a mistake, and I'll do better next time.
No, great answer, John. I feel like I'm always saying I'm sorry and taking advantage.
Yeah, look, humility is, there's an author who I respect tremendously, Jim Collins, who, is the author of Good to Great, and, he talks about leaders and, level 5 leaders, and he talks about how the best leaders are the ones who are the most humble and, not necessarily the loudest, but the ones who are most introspective and most humble, and I think that's great advice.
Yes, I agree with you. I always think, from my opinion, most people don't leave the organization because of the job in itself. It always has to do with the manager. It
For
is
sure.
always the manager. And it's spot on what you said. It's like you need to be able to keep your team, but also make sure that everyone around you that's working under you wants to work under you. Because
Yeah,
then you can get more work done. So
no
that was
doubt.
spot on.
No
Yeah.
doubt. They have options, right? I mean, you know, uh, if people can choose to do the work or not do the work. I mean, maybe they risk getting fired or they, but they don't have to do what you want them to do. So, by by being a respectable person, before even thinking about being a manager, you increase the chances that people are kind of part of the team and on the same page.
I'm just curious, do you think there are certain, not that I'm into this, but do you think there are certain personality traits that make a great manager? Like specific
I think
ones?
Yeah, I think there are some core behaviors. I don't know if I would call them personality traits. I think because I think they can be learned. I think now I might be repeating myself a little bit, but the most effective leaders are the ones who, I think treat people with decent respect. They use please and thank you. That common courtesy is kind of part of their nature. I think active listening is a really, really important behavior that the best leaders exhibit. The idea of maybe asking more questions than giving answers. If you as a leader can be humble enough to know that and accept that you don't have all the answers, and that asking a good question is generally more effective than giving somebody an answer. I think that's a great trait to have. And I think there's a lot to be said for discipline. Leaders who aren't disciplined and aren't consistent in their own behaviors are likely to breed inconsistency and lack of discipline in their teams, and it creates chaos for the organization. And so I think it might be boring, but being predictable and stable is a good characteristic to have as a leader.
Yes, great answer. I think active listening, definitely that's probably number 1
Yeah.
before we even start talking is to actually hear what your teams are saying. Discipline is very important just because I think that's a just in life in general, there has to be some discipline because then you just don't move forward.
You make a great point that the things we talk about for leaders and managers are so applicable just to life in general. There's tons of overlap, and I think that you make a really good point there.
Perfect. So, John, just before we get into some of the fun questions, is there anything else you want to share in regards to AIM and some of the what you're looking forward to or for like the next 5 years? What are some of your goals, or is it just more on, an annual basis?
Sure. No, I mean, look, I think I'm entering a part of my career where, I think my full-time role as a head of a big business is winding down, and I want, over the next 5 years, I want to spend more time being out there sharing all the great stuff that I've learned, and I've developed some of it myself, but much of it is just a culmination of experiences and lessons from nearly 40 years of working for great people and great organizations. And I want to pass that on. I think AIM is the kind of the bucket that holds all of the really core stuff that I think makes managers and leaders successful. And to the extent that I can spend the next several years in various ways helping spread the word that keeping focused on good action item management and creating a culture within organizations that is focused on action item management. I think it's a message that hopefully can really create more and more effectiveness, particularly in an age where people are relying more and more on technology and maybe stepping away more than I would like or more than I would recommend from some of the personal leadership behaviors.
Yes, I agree. I think we're going to miss the personal experience. That's what I'm a little bit nervous about as well as we mentioned. I need to pick up one of your books, by the way. I didn't know it was 5.
I will send you one if you give me your mailing address. In fact, I'll send you all 5 if you want.
Oh, thank you so much.
Of
So
course.
I know you're in New Jersey and probably it's not the best time to travel, but if there was one place you could travel to, where haven't you been and where would you go?
That's a great question. Australia's on my bucket list. Greece is on my bucket list. I have been fortunate. One of my jobs was with a company that was based in England, and it was an international company, and we got to travel to national meetings all over the place. So I have gotten into quite a few places, but and I've been to most places in North America. But Australia and Greece are kind of on my bucket list right now.
Nice, nice. I know if you are working or if anyone's ever had the experience of working, like you mentioned elsewhere, it's easier to travel throughout those countries.
For
So,
sure. For
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And I have to ask, so you're in New Jersey, is there a bagel spot that you typically go to?
There's, um, you know, I don't have a really good answer for that. I mean, there's a couple of bagel stores right near me. I'm not a huge bagel person. I'm a little, although I love carbs, I'm a bit more on the protein side.
Good for you.
I don't know. It's not fun, but I just get to that point where I need more protein in my body.
Yes, I'm starting to realize that too, and now I'm just trying to figure out if I'm gluten sensitive or something at this point, but we won't go there in this conversation. So, I have one last question I typically ask the guests, which is if you could describe your, like, life journey in one word, what would it be? I know,
Wow.
it's one of those questions, just one
Wow,
word.
that's a deep
And the words have
question.
been I know, and the words have been really interesting coming from, a lot of the guests that I've had, and some of them have been really shocking.
Yeah. Wow, that's a deep question. Requires a little bit of thought. I don't know. Is roller coaster one word or two words?
I think it's one
Let's
word.
yeah, let's say it's one word. I think, my life journey, like anybody else's life journey, I think has been, there have been some thrills, there have been some scary times, there have been some, some times when you kind of feel like slowly climbing a hill, and there have been some times when you feel like you're on a runaway train, and the feeling in your stomach is a mix of excitement and anxiety. I think all of those things are have been present and they continue to be present throughout my life, and I like to think that my life has been a steady climb. I describe it as progress over the years. I feel like I'm in a better place than I was yesterday, and hopefully a better man than I was yesterday. But it's not exactly a straight line. So I guess roller coaster is the best way I could describe it. I love roller coasters, and I love loop de loops, and I love inversions, and I think that's what gives life a bit of fun. It's sometimes scary and sometimes it hurts, but roller coasters are a passionate way to enjoy life, and that's how I felt about my life.
No, that's a great word. I haven't heard that one, John.
I'm sure you've heard a lot of wacky stuff.
Some of the words have been really interesting. Yeah, roller coaster's an interesting one because that really just tells me that it hasn't been linear, right? If
Yep.
I'm just thinking in that projection, it hasn't been linear and it's going from like A to Z back to C
Yeah.
if you're talking and trying to describe that. So am I getting a good definition of it from that?
You read into it perfectly. That's exactly the right way to interpret it. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, John. Is there anything that you want to share as we're closing out this episode?
I mean, I appreciate the conversation. I think it's been a great talk. If anybody's interested in learning more, they can get me through my website at johndario.com. That's John with no H, Jon Dario.com. And you'll get a bit more about my background and some of the stuff I do. And I'm just really happy to have the platform and to be able to have a conversation like this.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on. And what we're going to do is share all of your information with AIM, and I'll look up all of the websites and the 5 books, and I'll list it on there as well.
And
And we'll
yeah,
put
do
it all.
give me your address as well. I'll be happy to send you a
Oh,
copy
thank
of
you
each
so
book.
much. That's so
Right.
nice of you. Yes, I definitely need to get back into reading. So I haven't had the time lately because I'm also busy with the 9 to 5 and the podcast. So
Yep.
it's been quite a lot. But I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's a great conversation, and I hope you had a great time too. I really try to make the guests feel comfortable in regards to talking it out.
Yeah, look, it's been fun. I mean, it's been more than just talking about business stuff. It's been a fun conversation. I love the energy, and I think it's been great.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sean, and reach out if you need anything or if you ever want to come back in the future. Just give me a ring and then we'll figure it out.
Outstanding. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye, John.